For decades, we have been told that eggs, specifically the yolks, were a risk to our cardiovascular health, something to be limited or avoided entirely once we hit our 50s and 60s. I am here to tell you today that this conventional wisdom is not just outdated, it is actively working against your cognitive longevity. After the age of 60, the brain undergoes a series of subtle, microscopic shifts that, if left unaddressed, lead to what many call the fog of aging. But what if I told you that the key to reversing this decline wasn't found in a high-priced supplement or a complex pharmaceutical, but on a simple carton in your refrigerator? There is a specific, profound transformation that occurs in the neural architecture of men and women over 60 who incorporate 2 whole eggs daily into their routine. And it is not just about nutrition in the general sense. It is about a specific biochemical bridge that eggs provide. A bridge that your aging brain can no longer synthesize effectively on its own. Most people try to solve brain fog or memory slips by adding more activities, puzzles, or expensive brain vitamins, but they are missing the foundational building blocks required to physically repair the neural connections themselves. Today, I am going to show you exactly how 2 eggs a day provides the precise molecular raw materials to restore membrane fluidity, boost neurotransmitter velocity, and protect your vision, which is, in many ways, the gateway to your brain's processing speed. If you have ever felt like your thoughts were just a fraction of a second slower than they used to be, or if you have noticed that focusing in a noisy room is becoming a chore, you need to stay with me. Because by the end of this video, I am going to reveal a brain-optimized way to prepare your eggs that prevents the oxidation of these delicate nutrients. Most people cook them in a way that effectively neutralizes the very benefits they are trying to gain. I will show you how to avoid that mistake and how to use this simple daily habit to protect your mind for the years ahead. When I speak about brain health after 60, I'm not talking about simple forgetfulness or the occasional misplaced set of keys. I'm talking about the structural preservation of your most vital organ. As a specialist in nutritional biochemistry, I have spent my career observing how specific whole food compounds interact with the aging human brain. And one of the most frustrating things I see in my clinical practice is how often people over 60 overlook the most effective, accessible tools because of health advice that was popularized 30 or 40 years ago. The anti-egg movement of the late 20th century was based on a flawed understanding of how dietary cholesterol relates to brain function. While medical boards were focused on the risk of arterial clogging, they were largely ignoring the structural requirements of the brain itself. Your brain is roughly 60% fat by weight, and it requires a constant, high-quality supply of specific lipids to maintain its structural integrity. When you starve your system of these building blocks, the brain doesn't just slow down, it begins to compromise its own repair mechanisms to keep basic functions running. Quick favor before we go further. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments. When I see where people are watching from, it helps me tailor the advice for what you're dealing with where you live. I read everyone. Now stay with me, because what's coming next regarding the silent shrinkage of the aging brain might fundamentally change how you view your morning breakfast routine. We are entering a phase of life where the just eat less advice of our younger years no longer applies. In your 30s, your body could prioritize repair, even with a less than ideal intake. After 60, the margin for error disappears. You are no longer just maintaining your body. You are actively defending your cognitive independence. Understanding this shift is the first step toward reclaiming that mental sharpness you might feel is slipping away. The research on what happens at the cellular level when you provide the brain with the right lipid support is nothing short of transformative, and it starts with a reality check on how your brain actually ages. To understand why the humble egg is so critical, we must first confront the reality of what is happening inside the cranium of the average 60-year-old. It isn't a dramatic event. It is a slow, quiet process that often goes unnoticed for years. Imagine your brain as a massive, intricate network of superhighways. When you were 20, these roads were newly paved, smooth, and perfectly connected. Every signal, a memory, a complex thought, a quick reflex, traveled at lightning speed with no resistance. But as the decades pass, that network begins to experience what neurologists call atrophy, or silent shrinkage. It starts with the insulation surrounding your neural fibers, known as the myelin sheath. Think of this like the rubber coating on an electrical wire. When that coating wears thin or becomes brittle, the electrical signals traveling through your brain begin to leak. They lose speed, they degrade in clarity, and that is precisely what you experience as a delayed reaction time or that annoying tip-of-the-tongue phenomenon. I recall a patient, let's call him Arthur. At 64, Arthur was a brilliant retired engineer. He came to see me because he felt he was losing his edge. He wasn't forgetful in a clinical sense, but he described it as trying to think through a thick, heavy blanket. He felt he had to work twice as hard to focus on a conversation in a loud restaurant or keep track of multiple tasks in his woodworking shop. He thought it was just getting old. But his brain was actually sending him a distress signal. It was crying out for the raw materials to repair the myelin insulation and maintain the fluidity of his neurons. When we look at the brain of an aging adult, we often see these highways becoming narrow and cluttered. Debris from metabolic processes accumulates because the brain's internal cleanup crew isn't getting the nutrients required to do its job. The brain effectively enters a state of conservation mode. It stops splurging on high-speed connectivity and starts cutting corners. This isn't just about memory. It is about your capacity to navigate the world with confidence. And the tragedy is that millions of people accept this decline as an inevitable part of the aging process, never realizing that they are essentially starving their brain of the specific building blocks, the lipids and the specific protein complexes that are abundant in the yolk of an egg. Now let's talk about the first major mechanism and why this is where the egg yolk becomes a non-negotiable tool for the aging brain. The star of the show here is a nutrient called choline. Most people have never heard of it, yet your brain is arguably more dependent on it than almost any other organ in your body. Choline is the fundamental precursor to acetylcholine, one of the most critical neurotransmitters you possess. Think of acetylcholine as the messenger molecule of your brain. Every time you recall a name, learn a new skill, or shift your focus from one thought to another, acetylcholine is the spark that makes that connection happen. In your younger years, your liver could synthesize modest amounts of choline, and your dietary intake was likely sufficient. But after the age of 60, the internal production of choline often drops significantly, and the demand for it actually increases as the brain works harder to maintain its structural integrity. When your acetylcholine levels begin to dip, the first thing you notice is a lack of mental agility. You are not necessarily losing memories, but you are losing the speed at which you can retrieve them. You feel like you are searching through a dusty filing cabinet rather than a digital database. The egg yolk is one of the most concentrated bioavailable sources of choline in the entire human diet. Specifically, it contains phosphatidylcholine, a form that is highly efficient for your body to absorb and transport directly across the blood-brain barrier. When you consume 2 eggs, you are delivering a concentrated dose of this messenger precursor directly to the neural tissues that need it most. It is important to emphasize that this is not a temporary boost like caffeine. Caffeine stimulates the system, effectively whipping a tired horse to run faster. Choline, through the production of acetylcholine, actually repairs the mechanism itself. It is providing the raw materials for the neurotransmitter, essentially restocking your brain's messenger supply. This is why, for many people, the shift to including eggs daily isn't felt as a sudden rush of energy, but as a gradual, subtle return of that feeling of being on again. You find yourself participating in conversations with more ease. You navigate complex tasks without the mental exhaustion. And you feel that heavy, foggy blanket beginning to lift because the communication pathways in your brain are finally being properly fueled again. I need to stop you right here because I know what many of you are thinking. Wait, Dr. Lee, I've spent 20 years lowering my cholesterol. Are you telling me that everything I've done was wrong? This is the belief-breaking point that trips up most people over 60. You have been taught to fear cholesterol as the enemy, when in reality, your brain is the most cholesterol-dense organ in your entire body. Without it, your brain cells literally cannot maintain their structure. The pattern interrupt is this. Your brain is not an artery. The rules for your heart are not the rules for your hippocampus. While your heart requires a clean, non-obstructed environment, Your brain requires a structural, lipid-rich environment to function. When you drastically lower your lipid intake, you aren't just protecting your heart, you are accidentally starving the very cells that allow you to remember your grandchildren's names or follow complex instructions. It is time to separate these two distinct physiological needs. This leads us to our second critical mechanism, the maintenance of neuronal membrane fluidity. Every single one of your brain cells is encased in a double layer of lipids, known as the phospholipid bilayer. Think of this membrane not as a solid wall, but as a living, breathing, flexible gateway. It must be fluid enough to let nutrients in and waste products out, yet stable enough to protect the delicate genetic machinery inside. As you age, these membranes undergo a process called lipid peroxidation. This is essentially rusting at the molecular level. Free radicals attack the fats in your brain's cell membranes, making them stiff, brittle, and impermeable. When the membrane is stiff, the proteins that need to move across it, the sensors, the receptors, the communication portals, get stuck. They become locked in place. The result? Your brain cells stop talking to one another. The healthy fats found in whole egg yolks, specifically phospholipids like sphingomyelin and phosphatidylserine, act as a protective repair crew. They literally patch the gaps in these membranes, displacing the damaged, oxidized fats and replacing them with fresh, fluid, structural components. This restores the gatekeeping function of your neurons. Your brain doesn't just work faster, it becomes more responsive to its environment. This is why many people who commit to this 2-egg daily protocol report that their background processing speed seems to improve. They aren't just thinking clearer, they are reacting with the fluidity of a younger, more resilient mind. Now we need to address something that is rarely discussed in the context of cognitive decline: the direct connection between your eyes and your brain. Many people view their eyes as separate from their cognitive health, but from a neurological perspective, your retina is actually an extension of your brain. It is the only place in your body where you can directly observe neural tissue without surgery. And as you age, the ability of your eyes to process light and transmit visual data to the brain begins to degrade. This isn't just about needing stronger glasses. It's about the massive cognitive load your brain takes on when it has to work overtime to interpret blurry or low-contrast visual information. This is where the egg yolk serves a second, equally vital purpose through two powerful antioxidants, lutein and zeaxanthin. These are carotenoids, but they aren't just randomly distributed throughout your body. They are specifically deposited in the macula of your eye and, as recent research has discovered, they are also concentrated in the frontal cortex, the area of your brain responsible for executive function, decision-making, and focus. When you consume 2 eggs, you are delivering a potent, highly bioavailable dose of these pigments directly to the tissues that need them. Think of lutein and zeaxanthin as blue light filters for your brain's internal optical sensor. They protect your neurons from high-energy, short-wavelength light, the kind of light that induces oxidative stress. When your brain is constantly bombarded with visual noise that it can't filter properly, it consumes a tremendous amount of metabolic energy just to see clearly. This creates a state of chronic cognitive exhaustion. By saturating your system with lutein and zeaxanthin, you are effectively turning down the static in your visual processing centers. When your brain receives high-fidelity information from your eyes, it doesn't have to work as hard to interpret the world around you. You aren't just seeing better, you are thinking more clearly because the neural energy that was being wasted on visual correction is now available for higher-level cognitive tasks. You'll notice this when you are driving in overcast weather, or trying to read in a dimly lit room, or focusing on a conversation while walking through a busy park. Your brain feels lighter, less strained, and significantly more capable of handling the complexity of your daily life because you have protected the very intake channels that feed your mind. To ground this in science, I want to highlight a compelling study published in the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism. Researchers conducted a longitudinal analysis focusing on the relationship between dietary choline intake, specifically from whole egg consumption, and cognitive performance in adults over the age of 60. The study aimed to move beyond the epidemiological associations we often see and look at actual, measurable cognitive markers. The findings were revealing. Participants who maintained a steady, high-quality intake of choline, hitting the recommended dietary targets through whole eggs, demonstrated significantly higher scores on standardized tests for verbal memory, executive function, and psychomotor speed compared to the control group. More importantly, the researchers used neuroimaging techniques to look at structural connectivity. They observed that the high choline group showed better preservation of white matter integrity. This directly confirms what I discussed earlier. The choline in eggs isn't just a temporary boost. It is physically supporting the insulation of those neural superhighways we talked about. Furthermore, a study in the European Journal of Nutrition explored the role of egg-derived carotenoids. They found that older adults with higher plasma levels of lutein and zeaxanthin, the exact antioxidants we just discussed, showed greater cortical thickness in the regions of the brain associated with memory retrieval and visual spatial reasoning. Think about the implications of this. We are looking at data that suggests a direct link between what you eat at breakfast and the physical structure of your brain years later. This is not about preventing aging. It is about managing it with the right tools. We are talking about data-backed strategies to maintain your independence, your sharpness, and your ability to engage with the world on your own terms. This research should give you confidence that this isn't just wellness advice. This is an evidence-based approach to protecting your cognitive legacy. When you see these results, you begin to understand why the 2 eggs daily protocol is so frequently cited by researchers looking for simple, highly effective ways to support long-term neuropreservation in the aging population. Now that you understand the why, we have to talk about the how. Because here is the hidden danger. How you cook your eggs can actually determine whether you are getting these brain-healing nutrients or whether you are simply eating a protein-rich meal with oxidized fats. Many people cook their eggs at high heat, frying them in a pan until the edges are crispy and brown, or hard-boiling them to the point where the yolk turns that telltale gray-green color. That gray color is a sign that the sulfur in the egg has reacted with the iron, and more importantly, that the delicate fats in the yolk have undergone oxidative stress. You have effectively killed the very lipids and antioxidants you were trying to consume. To truly optimize your brain health, you must adopt the soft set protocol. This method preserves the structural integrity of the choline, the phospholipids, and the carotenoids. First, use pasture-raised eggs whenever possible. The nutrient profile, especially the ratio of omega-3 fatty acids, is significantly higher than conventional eggs. Second, the cooking method. The goal is to keep the yolk in a semi-liquid or soft, creamy state. I recommend a gentle poaching or a low-temperature scramble. If you prefer a scramble, use a non-stick pan, a very small amount of healthy oil like avocado oil or a touch of butter, and keep the heat on low. Constant, gentle stirring is the key. You want the eggs to be just cooked through, with the yolk remaining soft and creamy. Never let the yolk reach the point where it becomes powdery or dry. If you choose to poach them, let the water reach a gentle simmer, not a rolling boil, and cook for exactly 3 to 4 minutes. This ensures the yolk remains at that perfect, nutrient-dense consistency. Consume these daily. Consistency is the secret. Your brain is not a static organ. It is constantly turning over cells, repairing membranes, and fighting off oxidative damage. Providing it with these building blocks every single morning creates a steady, reliable plasma concentration of the nutrients it needs to thrive. It is not about one megadose once a week. It is about the daily habit of giving your brain the raw materials to repair itself day after day, year after year. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one final essential thought. The journey to preserving your cognitive sharpness is not about finding a cure for aging. It is about understanding that your brain is an active, living participant in your daily nutrition. It is waiting for the signals you send it every time you sit down to eat. By choosing to incorporate these 2 eggs into your morning routine, you are doing more than just eating breakfast. You are providing your neurons with the structural foundation they need to stay resilient, fluid, and sharp. This is your legacy of independence. It is your way of ensuring that you stay present, focused, and engaged with everything that matters to you for as many years as possible. You have more control over your brain's future than you might believe, And it starts with these small, daily, evidence-based choices. If you found this information valuable, please take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button. I read every comment, and the people who subscribe are the first to receive this kind of deep dive research the moment it is published. It ensures you never miss a beat in protecting your long-term health. Also, drop a comment below and tell me, what is one specific goal you have for your health this year? Whether it's staying sharp for your grandkids or finally mastering that hobby you've been putting off. I want to know what you are aiming for. Your goals, your stories, and your questions are the direct inspiration for the research I bring to you on this channel. Until next time, take care of your mind. It is the most remarkable tool you will ever own, and with the right care, it will serve you faithfully for decades to come.